Excellent. Well, hi there, everyone. Welcome. This is another one of our bite-sized webinars, where today we're going to be talking about some top tips for completing a job application form. I'm sure that a lot of people that are watching today have sent off applications and been rejected or are in the process of sending off applications. I know myself and probably Lindsey as well has done this many times in our career history. The application form is the first thing that employers are going to see. So it's really important that you have some tips and tricks up your sleeve to be successful. So today you'll be getting some guidance from myself and from Lindsey from the University of Lincoln. So that'll hopefully be useful in your job search and application. So first things first, probably a good idea to introduce ourselves. So my name is Louise Sivewright. I'm a talent acquisition marketing specialist for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I work with 17 universities across the northeast of England, all the way up from Sunderland down to Nottingham, marketing our graduate programme, getting to know prospective students and candidates. And I'm joined today by Lindsey Cameron. So Lindsey, I'll pass over to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Louise. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Lindsey Cameron, and I am an employment skills advisor at the University of Lincoln. So I work within the main careers and employability team there, but my role is specifically to support students initially building employability skills as they work through their studies, particularly through our Lincoln Award, to help students with job search strategies and different approaches to looking for work, and ultimately to support students through the application process. So this is everything from the very start, so writing CVs and cover letters, all the way through writing online job applications, attending assessment centres, and attending final interviews.
Excellent. So you're going to have a load of a really interesting insight for us, Lindsey, today, which is going to be great. So perfect. So we're going to start off. We've got a couple of hints and tips across the next few slides, just to give you a little bit of guidance in your job application, and just basically to provide you with some advice from us. So first things first, take your time. It's easier said than done, but it's really important that you take your time when completing these job applications. Rushed applications that are not personalised will be immediately obvious to employers and can give the impression that you really don't care about getting the role. It makes a lot more sense to actually submit sort of 5 tailored, specific, well thought out applications that will stand out to employers rather than 10 generic that are far less likely to get you noticed. Taking the time to read that job application, it may seem like an obvious step, but a lot of people actually frequently skip it. Getting a good sense what the job is, and then you can tailor your job application to that. It's probably one of the most important steps that I can start with. Employers typically receive hundreds of applications for a position. One of the most common methods that they'll use to narrow the applicant pool is to just eliminate anyone who they think did not read that job description or requirements, does quite clearly not put that initial effort in to that application. Some questions may be a simple yes or no, some may be more in-depth competency-based questions. So just make sure that you read it a couple of times to make sure you understand and take some time to really formulate a thorough answer. As well, Lindsey can expand on this a little bit more, but employers will ask a variety of different types of questions. So character, behavioural, hypothetical. And if you want to increase your chance of success, you need to make sure that you respond to these questions effectively. Lindsey, do you have any sort of first tips on how to really take your time and make the most of that job application?
I think I'd just like to reiterate the point that you made about quality over quantity. Yeah. I think that's so important, because I do come across quite a few students who say, I've put forward 30 applications, and then the worrying thing is they're not often aware of how much time it takes to put forward a really good application. It can take hours, it really can. So you don't want to be starting that application the night before. So setting yourself out some good, time management skills, put those in place. Give yourself time to put together that application. It might mean writing it in a Word document and going back to it every day or every second day with a fresh mind. Taking time to research the role and the employer before you even start writing your applications is so important, and that takes time too. So I think the
Definitely.
time management is key in putting together, as you said, those tailored applications and not
100%.
submitting generic applications.
Yeah, and every application is different as well. So in some cases, you might find that it is just a quick, what's your date of birth, what's your name, what's your experience, which is super easy. But then I know, for example, a couple of employers will ask more competency-based questions. So can you tell us a time when X, Y, and Z? Can you give us an example of X, Y, and Z? So it's really important, like you say, to just take your time, read the question, and we'll sort of expand on keeping it relevant a little bit more in future slides. But it's a great first tip, is to just take your time, and just make sure that you're filling it out to demonstrate to the employer that you are a worthy candidate invested in the hiring process. And this is really the first stage. Excellent. So on to the next slide. So sell yourself. A job application is not a time to be humble. It can feel quite unnatural. It can feel a little bit strange, almost bragging about yourself and your achievements. But this is a time when you are selling yourself to an employer and making them believe that you are better than any other candidate. A lot of employers will only open up a few positions. So you are going up against a lot of candidates for a few spots. You do need to really make sure that this is your time to shine. The job application stage, like you mentioned before, is generally the first stage. So this is the time that you really need to get across all of your successes, all of your positive attributions, and really get yourself recognized by the employer. Especially at the moment, there are more and more positions available post-pandemic. I don't know if you're finding this, Lindsey, as well, that employers are opening up a wider range of options at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And because it's post-pandemic, it's interesting to see how some of the criteria is remaining quite the same, but we're seeing those criteria such as demonstrating resilience and being persistent and being adaptable and flexible. We're seeing those sorts of criteria coming up in a lot of these new jobs too.
Definitely. And it's just important that you get those attributes and you really sell yourself, as the slide says. For example, like I was mentioning before, some of those competency-based questions, if for example they give you they ask you to say something about teamwork or working as part of a team, as important as it is to show that you have the teamwork skills, you also need to sell you and how you were part of that team and the contribution that you made. So it's very important as well to not displace any responsibility or any success from yourself, but to definitely sort of talk up what it is that you've done to contribute towards the final success of a university piece or something in previous employment. So don't displace responsibility of the outcome. And as well, don't just speak about academic achievements, talk about your hobbies, your interests, sporting teams, voluntary activities, as this all really builds on your personal brand. And as awkward as it can be to brag about things like this, or to brag, I should say, because it's not bragging, it's talking about your successes. It's really important in a job application, as you want to be recognised as the best person for that role. Do you find, Lindsey, that a lot of people tend to skip out sports and hobbies and interests and think it's not important?
I do. I think a lot of students and graduates tend to focus on the academic performance and perhaps the jobs that they've had. But, you know, we know that students hold great positions, leadership positions, teamwork positions in student societies, in sporting teams, in local community, theatrical groups, whatever. And they are great opportunities to demonstrate those key employability skills. And I think as you go through applications, if you're able to share a variety of experiences, including the academic side of things, but also those extracurricular activities, it's a great way to showcase in your application the expanse of your experiences. And employers love that, don't they? They love to know that you've had those different experiences. So do really consider where you can draw those skills from.
Exactly. And also from my experience as someone that does do interviews and does look at these job applications, if we see someone that engages in a lot of different activities on that job application, it's actually really attractive because it shows that they've got good time management skills. It shows that they're flexible, that they want to get involved and really enhance those skills. So talking about anything and everything, whether you're a gym goer, whether you play a musical instrument, whether you're a part of a sports team, It's all really important stuff. So make sure that you do really sell those extra things you do in that job application, because it can actually go a long way. It's not all about the academic and the work experience. Perfect. So we'll move on to the next slide. Again, drawing on the last two, and this is just a bit of a shorter tip, but just make sure that you keep your application relevant. As much as you need to sell yourself, you also need to make sure that the information you decide to display is relevant to that job. Employers read hundreds of applications weekly, we really do. So if the answer is too long or too broad, we're just less likely to be interested as an employer. I always call it cutting out the waffle. You just want to condense your answer. It's, again, as we mentioned in the first slide, it's quality over quantity. You don't have to write an essay for each question. If it is a competency-based job application, just straight to the point, get your answer across, and again, sell yourself whilst you're doing that. Long paragraphs aren't always the answer. Just get across what you need to say whilst keeping it relevant. Lindsey, do you have anything that you want to add on to that one?
I think it's always good for the applicant to think about the person who's going to be reading this application.
Definitely.
And so things like a good reading flow really help. As you said, keep the paragraph shorter, to the point, rather than big bulky paragraphs. Using structures like the STAR structure, STAR standing for situation, task, action, result, that can really help you both in written applications, but also in interviews too, giving verbal responses. But we do find if students do apply these structures, it gives the employer everything they really need in that response, and it gives it them in a very structured way too. So it's an easy read, and it hits on all the key points. So it avoids the waffle. So it sort of keeps you on track, and it keeps your language concise and tight, which is what you're looking for.
Exactly. I actually mentioned the last bite-sized webinar I did, was on presentation skills, and there was a point in that is really relevant to this. Actually, it was the rule of three, which was anything that you want to say can actually be explained in 3 sentences or less. And I think that's a really good point to talk about in terms of job application as well. If there's something that you need to get, a point that you need to get across, generally you can do it in 3 sentences. So that's not always the case if it is requiring something a little bit longer, but it's a good thing to try and apply to really cut out that unnecessary information that you are putting in.
Some also, just to add, some application forms will have word limits. Definitely. So just be aware that not all do, but some do. So just be aware if you have to respond to an online question and it's a 200-word limit, then obviously you cannot go above that. You haven't. It's proof that you haven't been following instructions. But if they've given you 200 words, then you don't want to finish that response with 30 words because that's going to be too brief also. So do pay attention to those guidelines.
Yeah, that is a really good point, Lindsey, as well. I think make sure you don't go over, and you're not underestimating how much it is that you need to put. Try and stick normally within about 50 words of the word count, I think is a good place to be. Excellent. So moving on, attach a cover letter, and again, keep it relevant, just like what we were saying before. So events like job fairs will give the opportunity to meet many employers all at once. So a generic cover letter in that instance would be appropriate. For example, when I attend careers fairs, I'm not going to expect prospective candidates coming up to me and having a cover letter for enterprise, a cover letter for the police, a cover letter for the council. We're not expecting that. In the case of a job fair, a generic cover letter is fine. However, if you're applying for a specific job in person or online, you're definitely going to want to tailor that cover letter and your CV to suit that application. Like we mentioned in the previous slide, read the job description thoroughly and then tailor that cover letter to that application. The job description in itself will have a lot of information about the role. It'll have what required educational background is needed, what type of personality fits the position, any skills that they would prefer a candidate to possess. So try and draw from the job description and tailor your cover letter to that. That will then frame you as sort of the perfect candidate that has the skills that employer is looking for. Keep your sentences concise but impactful, very much the same as what we were just saying with keep it relevant, cut out that unnecessary waffle. you really want to fit your cover letter on no more than a page or half a page, really, I would say, because you'll lose the attention of the person reading it. And remember as well, the cover letter is just a snapshot. The interview is when you'll be able to draw on what it is that you have written on that cover letter. So we don't need big essays. We just need, half a page to a page. Lindsey, do you have any sort of cover letter writing tips there?
I do think the cover letter is something that students and graduates struggle with more than the CV.
Definitely.
Not knowing where to start, not knowing what to include, not knowing how to structure it. I do think if we think about a cover letter, as I said earlier, using a good structure. So it's breaking it up into that introduction, a body, and then a nice, closing conclusion. An easy read, as you said, Louise, no more than a page, but, ideally maybe 2/3 of a page is enough. You're not going to be able to include everything, so don't try to. But you're just trying to put enough information in there, relevant information in there, to entice the employer to shortlist you for an interview.
Exactly.
So in that tailoring, I would say in the body of the letter, don't just address the criteria of the role that you're applying for, but also within that body of the letter, talk about why you're applying to that employer, why you've picked that employer out. That can often grab their attention, and it takes that letter from being generic to being very, very specific to them. So that will hopefully get you shortlisted and get you an interview. But good structuring, a good read, concise language, because in a way, when they look at this cover letter, they're looking at it as, what are your written communication skills like? How do you put together a letter? Because this will be how you will be perhaps communicating with clients in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent points, Lindsey. It is a thing that a lot of candidates do generally miss, even if the job description doesn't require you to attach a cover letter. If you are, when you're filling that out and it gives you the option to attach an attachment, just pop one on there anyway, I would say, because then again, if they've not asked for one and you've put one on, it is putting you in the minds of the employers as well and helping you to stand out. So I would definitely do a cover letter. And like I say, again, if you want to make a generic one and take it to a job fair as sort of an additional material to give the employer, excellent. That's probably a really good way to go as well. Perfect. So moving on, including keywords. Now, many employers actually use something called as an applicant tracking system, or ATS, which is an automated system that can be fine-tuned to actually just automatically reject applications that are missing information or do not have the right keywords, which is something I actually only learned about recently. So even though you might not be able to predict what the ATS is actually looking for, you can still advance your application by making sure to try and include the correct information. So again, this can be drawn out from the job description, find relevant keywords that are being used in that job description, or if they ask for any particular traits, skills, or experiences that the company is looking for, use that to tactically put that through your CV, your job application, and that cover letter. There's no need to be heavy-handed with them. If you put in them every single sentence, it's going to be obvious that you're just cutting and pasting that from the job description. But just try to include those keywords that portray you as capable of fulfilling that job requirement. For example, if the job has any technical specifications, highlight those in your practical skills. If the job requires you, for example, to interact regularly with customers or co-workers, mention about your communication skills and your customer service, and that should really hit those keywords. Had you heard of that ATS before, Lindsey, or is it just me that has never heard of this before?
I have heard of it before, but there's more talk about it now than there used to be. So I think it is being used more and more by employers and recruiters, of all sizes. And we don't know if they're going to use it or not. So I think we just have to be prepared that they might be using ATS systems, and therefore we do need to get those keywords in there. So we score well with the ATS system. But I think your point about not being heavy-handed is really important too. We can overdo it and just try to keep throwing those keywords, those values, those attributes in there. And then suddenly your application just becomes a bit contrived. It doesn't flow naturally. So it's picking out relevant ones, good ones that you can, link to, that you feel really have a connection with, and putting them in the most sort of natural way that you can.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, drawing on the last couple of slides, taking your time to read that job description, including those keywords, and then again, like you say, keeping it relevant, making sure that we're cutting out the waffle, we're putting what needs to be in there, and we're not overdoing it. Excellent. So that moves nicely into the next one. So again, it seems so simple, but you'll be surprised, and Lindsey, I'm sure you can agree, how many times this really simple point is missed. So misspellings and grammar errors show an employer that you just didn't care enough to check. That's basically what it is. Most jobs require those basic communication and written skills. So not even putting in the effort to spell check or grammar check that job application before submitting it really hinders your chance of being hired. If you're not sure of how well you've done in terms of error correction, always asking someone to look through an application, and again, either whether that's a friend or family member, or using those employability and career services that people like Lindsey provide at university. That is exactly what they're there for, to help you go through these things. And an error-free application is one that's going to make you most likely to be considered as a candidate. So I won't go into too much detail on this one because it is quite an obvious one, but yeah, just use the services that are there for you at university or through support through family, to just make sure that you are just really checking those applications. Lindsey, I'm sure you can probably add to how many times people miss out this when they're submitting things.
Yeah, it's so very, very important. And we all know that when we've worked on a document, we've looked at it a million times. So we stop seeing those errors. And that's why it's really important to just put it aside, give a break, give yourself a break, go back to it the next day. Again, that involves time management with these applications, so you've got time to do that, but also before you press the send button, before you submit, you really need to have time to read through that whole document and make sure that it's clear of typos, of errors, and ideally get someone to read over it with fresh eyes. And if someone reads over it with fresh eyes, it's not just picking up on errors, but it could be something like that person says to you, I don't quite understand what you mean by this. And then you read it and you think, yeah, you're right. I didn't write that very clearly. I can write that a whole lot better. So
then it gives you the chance to expand on it, doesn't it?
It does.
Make that clearer.
Yeah. So can't express how important that is to spend that time and to go through it, and to get someone else to look through it. Proofread.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Right, excellent. Now, tidy social media. We are living in the modern world. Social media is everything to everyone. And it's very common for employers to look at your social media profiles, and they want to know a little bit more about the person that they're hiring. And they feel that social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, and more commonly LinkedIn, which we'll move on into in the final slide, are really good sources to get to know you a little bit more as an individual. So then it's really important to go over your profiles, consider removing anything that you maybe wouldn't want employers to see, if it's maybe distasteful, offensive, anything like that. Just do a full spring clean of your social media. It might mean deleting posts or comments that you feel might not reflect well on you, and they may not represent your current maturity level. If you're like me, I've had social media since I was 12 years old, which was a very, very long time ago. And, you don't think as much then as you maybe do now when you're posting things. So really a good idea to just tidy up your social media and make sure that what you're putting online really does represent who you are now, and making sure that that is the version of yourself that you want to put across to prospective employers. Again, Lindsey, anything to add on social media?
I think you've said it all, Louise. I think if you're a final year student now, looking ahead to apply for graduate jobs and schemes or internships, it's just you're moving into that job search part of your life now. So it's just keeping those social media activities in mind as you make posts now and moving forward, or comments. Just be aware that employers will be looking at your social media profiles, and Definitely. What do you want them to see? What do you want them to understand about you? Just be mindful of all of that moving forward.
Definitely. And then this moves on nicely into the final slide, which is attach your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is a really good platform, and it is really good to familiarize yourself with it before you get on the job hunt. So if you are maybe still in school or college thinking about moving into university, or if you're in university thinking about your future career aspects, it's really good to familiarize yourself with LinkedIn now. It gives employers a chance to see what activities, events you've been attending, your personal and professional achievements, and the society and businesses that you engage with. And it is also an excellent platform to network with people. Everyone is on LinkedIn now in the sort of the professional world. It gives you a chance to not only meet prospective employers, but people that can help your career development in terms of the skills, webinars, different services that can be offered via LinkedIn as well. So it's really good to not only just get on LinkedIn, but to establish your platform so that prospective employers can see that. And if you actually attach your LinkedIn profile, I know on my CV, I had a little LinkedIn link on there, which would take you straight to my LinkedIn profile. And it almost acts like a secondary CV in a way, because it gives employers the opportunity to go and learn a little bit more about you in detail. If you're an academic as well, I actually learned recently that you can publish any published work on there, or any pieces of writing that you've done. You can pop on there for future employees to see any work that you've done. So it's a really good way to just showcase who you are for employees to see. Do you use LinkedIn, Lindsey? Is this something that you try and promote your students to use?
Yeah, we do. And I remember years ago when LinkedIn came about, and we were thinking, well, surely there'll be competition for LinkedIn. And we didn't promote it so much then for that reason, but there never really has been. LinkedIn is that kind of professional social media platform that has been used for years now, and it almost goes from strength to strength. So it's quite a good jobs board now. So students are using it for various reasons, put their profile up there, use it for networking reasons, use it to find jobs, to be seen by employers. And if you put your LinkedIn URL on your CV, which we do encourage our students to do, it might be that the employer goes straight to the LinkedIn profile before they even read the CV, depending on what the employer's preference is, because they are slightly different. So for some employers, the CV is quite formal. If they go to a LinkedIn profile, it's maybe used in more personal pronouns, and it's just a little bit more personalized. So we don't know what they're going to read first. So that profile needs to be strong and updated too. So for a student, they may simply in their headline say that they're that University of Lincoln biology student. But at some point, they may want their LinkedIn profile to help them find an internship. So they may change that headline and say that they're that University of Lincoln biology student seeking an internship in the XYZ sector. So it's important to go back into your profile too, not every week, but every month or so, and see, do I need to update things?
Definitely. And again, moving slightly away from sort of the job application side of things, if you are unsure about LinkedIn, I know for me, I was really confused about how LinkedIn actually worked. I found it quite a hard platform to navigate. There are many YouTube tutorials out there, and I think Enterprise got a couple of blogs and YouTube videos on there as well about your LinkedIn profile and using social media in your job search. So please feel free to access those materials online as well, because it is really helpful to get into. Excellent. So that is the end of our hints and tips, but I just want to open the floor to any questions, just to see if there's anything in the chat box there, anything that anyone would like to ask, expand on. So we've got one here. Would you recommend reaching out and contacting the recruiter as part of the application, for example, on LinkedIn? Lindsey, do you want to go ahead and start this one off?
So in terms of contacting the recruiter or the employer, I think and Louise, you might have better insights into this, but I'm thinking it's always a good idea to make contact with the employer if it's for good reason. It certainly could put you on their radar if you're able to have a conversation with them, whether it be online, whether it be by phone, because they may remember you, and when your application lands, you know, in their inbox, they'll think, oh yes, I had a conversation with this person. But I think it needs to be for good reason, because recruiters and employers are super busy. So it might be that you really do want to know more about the role before you put forward the application. So think about the questions that you want to ask the recruiter or the employer, and by all means, if they're legitimate, good questions and inquiries, then go for it. What do you think, Louise?
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And from a recruiter's perspective, I really like when people reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email for certain things. So if it's, you know, they've been successful in one part of the interview and they want some hints and tips for the next stage, or if they've read about our job description online, but they want to learn a little bit more before applying, excellent. If it is generic questions that can be found on the website, or you know, things that are quite easily accessible, it almost looks to me as if, you know, they've not even bothered to read the job description before straight reaching out to a recruiter. But yeah, that recruiters are on LinkedIn for that reason. They're there to help and support and provide guidance and tips for that employer. But just be mindful of what you're sending them and how you're saying it. And again, a recruiter is often the first person that you'll have contact with. So again, be mindful of things like spelling, grammar, the way you're coming across, because, you know, every day is an interview, and making sure that you are getting that across in the best way from the get-go is just be mindful of that. And again, a lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn. A lot of companies use LinkedIn for recruitment now. So yeah, I would recommend reaching out to people and contacting them, but just be mindful of what it is that you're asking. Yeah, here on the screen, just quickly before we wrap up, is just all of Enterprise's sort of websites. We've got our Instagram, again, LinkedIn, and myself and all of the recruiters for the UK are on LinkedIn as well. Our Twitter, our Facebook, and our YouTube as well. And like I mentioned at the beginning, all of the other bite-sized webinars are pre-recorded and on our YouTube as well. So please feel free to have a look through them. And again, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. But massive thank you to Lindsey for joining me today. Really appreciate all of your guidance and tips. And Lindsey's on LinkedIn as well. So I'm sure if anyone has any questions, employability wise, you can shoot her across a message as well.
Definitely. It's been my pleasure, Louise.
Yeah, no worries at all. Well, thank you so much to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye now.
Bye. Bye.